what happens to your genealogy research and those family history items and heirlooms that you've been collecting when you're gone? None of us really wants to think about that, but are they going to be family treasures? Or is our family even really going to care about that? Today, I'm talking to Ellen Goodwin, co-founder of Artifacts, about how to turn our genealogy research, all that hard work we put into finding our ancestors, building that family tree, into a legacy that our family will actually want. It's not about being perfect. It's about finding something that's going to resonate with our family for generations to come. Now, if you're new here to the YouTube channel, I am Lisa. I am part of Are You My Cousin? And this YouTube channel is designed to help you find your ancestors, grow your family tree, and not be overwhelmed in the process. So I'm excited, so excited to be talking to Ellen and introduce Ellen to you guys today. We met several years ago at Tech and have become fast friends, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you, Ellen. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what Artifacts is and how it got started?
My pleasure. Hi, Lisa. Nice to see you today. Artifacts, my co-founder and I started it as inevitably a solution to a problem. The problem was her mother passed away unexpectedly. She was 65 and she had an estate plan, but when it came to the tangible assets, it said divide equally among 3 children. And while there was no conflict, she was lucky. She was still the eldest and the only girl, and her brothers were like, not it, don't get rid of anything important. So all that family research, all the family heirlooms, all of the mementos and keepsakes, how do you know what it all is and why does it matter? So Artifacts is that solution. We built a patented and award-winning website and mobile app where you can unite the stories and the memories and keep them all organized around the photos, the recipes, the heirlooms that you collect. You can even attach appraisals and receipts, documentation, citation materials when you're a researcher in the genealogy space. There's kind of an Artifacts approach for every type of collector and researcher. And we want to make it a warm and inviting environment. Everything's private by default, but easily shareable. And we have legacy contacts, which is really important to today's conversations. We want you to create all these artifacts and make sure that you pass them on to your family.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. I love the multiple ways of artifacting, as you call them, and because we have so many different types of artifacts or so many different types of things that we want to save. Today, my viewers are researchers. A lot of it is just research, but how do we actually share that in a meaningful way? And, sometimes it's a family tree, an actual family tree that we've created. Sometimes it's, the old family photographs. Sometimes it's a document that we found, but all of those are different when it comes to sharing those out there. And they resonate with some of us more than others in the family. That is for sure. One of the problems that I think that I see, that I know that I've personally had, and I know that others, when I talk to people in the genealogy world, have, is that we get so excited about everything. We want to save, well, everything. Every ancestor I found, every story I found, every document that I found. And the reality is that passing it down, how can I get people excited, that next generation? What is it that excites them? What is it that I never can quite figure out how I can capture their attention, if that makes sense. In other words, if I gave them everything in the file cabinet, it's definitely going to be a burden. So how do I start? Kind of what's the core of why is this happening and how come I can't seem to organize my thoughts around my family history in order to figure out what works and what they're going to resonate with?
I think that's a struggle everyone faces in your field, but I think there's also a really great starting point, which is your own passion and energy for those discoveries should be your guide. So what are your favorite discoveries? What are your favorite stories that you've gleaned from your research? That's where I always recommend that people who are hobbyists or professional genealogists start, because your own passion will lend that energy. And I think that, but if you tell yourself, what are my favorite things I've learned, my favorite stories, and just start with one of those. And then remember, we live in a bite-sized culture. So the second point to that is don't leave them 20 documents, 100 gallery photos in a gallery, and hours of video. That's just, you're shifting the burden to them to sort through all that and reconnect the dots that you've already connected. Give them a key photo. Give them 20 seconds of a video. You trim it, however you want to share it. Now, I do have someone I work with. She has 200 folders labeled by parts of the family tree on her laptop. And she's like, my family will inherit this. So what have we been doing? I've used the same approach with her. Tell me a story that you love. And it was great. It was right out of the Texas Wild West and the sheriff that helped catch these famous criminals. And what does she do? She has a picture of the gravestone. She has a write-up of her own words, what the story is. And then she shares it. She sends it out in text. And that's what's also part of the third part. You have to share it. You have to give them that opportunity to ask questions. And so you've made it an exciting and passionate topic. You've curated it down to something bite-sized and you've shared it. I think that's a recipe to get them excited and maybe even learn from them. What do you want to know next? Because they might have their own questions. No one's ever asked me in my family, I have a genealogist. I want to know when and where we came over from Europe. No one's ever told me this. And I think it's also, in terms of favorite stories or things you're most passionate about, the essential questions. Where did we come from? Kind of questions are also great fodder.
Oh, I definitely want to come back to that in just a second. But you made a comment that really, actually just really struck me. And you said, we live in a bite-sized culture. And I thought, while I know that, I've never thought of it and just verbalized it like that. And you're right. You're right. Nobody wants 200 folders worth of my notes. They want bite-sized, that what can they take in at that moment. And I truly, that just truly resonates with me. I think that's something I actually wrote it down. You see me over here taking notes as you're talking. I actually wrote that down because I'm like, bite-sized culture. I love that because it goes along with that key photo. One photo. They don't need the 200, and I have hundreds in my closet. Because I inherited everything. Nobody sorted anything, and so I do like that. I also like the thing of what you mentioned about when a family member is going to, when you're passing everything down, you've basically passed a little bit of procrastination down. In other words, if I can't, I'm procrastinating. I'm not actually making those decisions of what they might be interested in. And so I'm just giving them everything. And so it's kind of like, no wonder it starts to feel a burden. I think I had a little bit of that myself when I got boxes and boxes of things. I just happen to really like going through it.
Well, and you can lead them there, right? You can give them that bite-sized story and then tell them, if you want to know more, here's where it is, and give them a link. Tell them the box and put a number or, put some tape on it. But you can lead them down. You inevitably will have someone that comes along in your family that's as curious as you are. You can point them in the right direction. It's all here. Now, the question is, as you're just pointed out, you're the family keeper. That's what we like to call them at Artifacts, the family keeper. Now, the family keeper ultimately can't assume anyone will take those boxes of stuff. And that then becomes the question of, is it worth digitizing if it's not already available? And having those conversations. The thing I hate most is when I hear, oh, no one wants it. That's the headlines that the media feeds to us. Did you actually ask? And did you prepare them for this? Because I think if you don't ask and you don't prepare them for it by sharing some of the teaser stories, those bite-sized moments, I think you do set yourself up for failure. And we have to be careful about that.
I like that point. Definitely. I find that with oral history sometimes when I'm talking to people and I'm like, well, what's the family's oral history? Oh, we don't have any, or I'm sure there's not any there. And I'm like, but did you ask? And because inevitably that's where I have found the key pieces of information, just those little snippets of things that actually solve a genealogy problem for me there. So definitely, I think you're right. I think we need to take that effort and make sure we're asking at moving forward that way. So how do you decide? We talked about, that universal story that we talked about as being those kind of irreplaceable stories. What are the kinds of things that you find when people are trying to decide what to save or move that legacy forward? What are the things that you find are most commonly preserved? The things that people seem to want to preserve?
I hate to pop anyone's bubble to think it's going to be those most valuable things. It often isn't. We had an experience here at Artifacts where over a course of 1 week, 3 different individuals picked as their first object that they wanted to tell the family story of a brick. And each one of these bricks, I'm like, apparently people are running around with bricks in their suitcases and backpacks. Each one had like a really cool story, but they're bricks, right? And so I don't know that there's a pattern to what the objects are, other than there's a really deep emotional attachment. They might be emotional in a really difficult way, right? When you talk about families that came over from war and conflict and were displaced, that's one category. But there's also just the emotional, like when I met your mother, these kinds of stories. So I don't know that there's one type, but there is categorically the keepsakes that you feel guilty letting go of, and you don't even necessarily know why you're holding on to them. The other category is just, and you relate to this so well, Lisa, the boxes of photos. And I think that it makes people sad. Like, these people were in our family, they mattered. We see those boxes getting transferred house to house, generation to generation all the time. And at some point, someone's going to have to call a timeout on that, right? And we tell people, free your family. Tell them, I have captured the stories of the ones that I know about or that are most important. Here's where they are. Right now, that might be that you have them in a genealogy software. It might be that you have them in Artifacts. It might be you have them in a photo album. You might have done some rigorous Excel and Word magic. Whatever it is, tell them where those stories are and give them the pass. The rest, I don't know. You can get rid of them. I didn't have the heart to do it, but I give you permission. I won't haunt you. Go ahead and get rid of these photos, or recycle them, or bring it to an artist outlet, whatever it is. So I think that's what we're seeing, is a lot of the valuable tend to come up much more often in estate plans and insurance paperwork and things like that, where they're identifiably valuable and they can be worked out. But that's kind of our patterns, I would say.
That's really interesting. Okay. One thing that I know that shows up in our family, recipes.
Yeah.
Because I can't say I would have ever thought about our family as being foodies. That's a modern term, but yeah, I grew up in a woman. I learned to cook from my mother and my grandmother, and I have photographs of foods and family gatherings at the food table long before the cell phones were taking pictures of everything that we ate. And I have the recipe boxes and the recipes copied down in various handwritings. And I realized, and we would sit around and talk about food. We'd have breakfast, but we'd be talking about what we're having for the next meal at lunch, and then we just talk about food all the time. But it is those family, I'm finding those family recipes. So again, not necessarily the in our family, like the valuable things, but it might be, the cast iron skillet, the small cast iron skillet that we have from my grandmother's. So that's I like that.
And all things kitchen, you hit that right. All the battle-tested cookware, the recipes, the aprons, the cupcake tins, like those things, people get really, really attached to. There's the famous study, and workbook now about grandma's yellow pie plate. Like, these things have such rich histories for our family, but one person gets them. So again, as a genealogist and a researcher, and you're telling your family stories, being able to weave these in and give people access to it becomes really, really important for family history. That's really tangible. Oh yeah, I remember eating Grandma May's chocolate cookies. Who has the recipe? And is this how they're supposed to look? And let's all make them at the holiday. I think that that's really a neat way to keep the generations connected.
I think so too. And I think it's a way, I do believe that family history needs to be experienced multi-sensory. I think it's definitely can be, it's not just a sit and do your research. I think it can absolutely and should be experienced with all of our senses. And so food tends to bring people into that as well.
And it's a way you can make the family tree come alive, right? How many times have I heard my great grandfather's name and I'm like, it's just a name in the tree, except when they're like, when you go to the family home at the holidays and there's that big, beautiful harp in the living room. Yeah, he's the one that bought it. He brought it to the house in a horse-drawn carriage. He taught lessons. You actually make that person in the tree come alive with something tangible from your daily life. And I think that's the magic in a recipe and something that's in a living room that you've sat around every holiday since you were a child.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what are some concrete steps that someone could take, like say this week, starting this week, where they could start creating their own legacy. They could start curating that legacy.
Yeah. I have a bunch that I could choose from. Like,
I know you do.
where do I start? Curating family and legacy. The key is just start. Pick a path. It doesn't have to be all at once, right? Like, it's kind of like when password keepers came to be and everyone's like, you want me to put every password I have into, like, that's going to take forever. That's tedious. I don't want to. Just start. Pick one story you love. That's where I would start categorically. Do it one a week and see how their tempo goes. Make sure, again, though, that you're sharing it and getting that feedback loop. It's the encouragement you're going to need, right? So if someone wants to start today, I would say keep it. There's a rule on this we could put into the chat. 5 to 7 is the max, meaning pick 5 to 7 things. You could even, a lot of researchers like yourself like to have that roadmap, right? So write down the 5 or 7 that are your goal. You're going to feel really accomplished when you get them done. So pick 5 to 7, no more. Our brains don't like that. And tell those stories. Now, these might be your favorite stories like we talked about earlier. They might be just your most amazing discoveries. Start with those and jot them down. Start thinking about them, incubate while you're working, right? And I think that once you start documenting and you're like, okay, I have photos that go with this. I have heirlooms that go with that. I have documents, from the census that go with this. Like, you can start piecing that together. So I would say just start and write down those 5 to 7. That's where I would start, period.
I love that. You're absolutely just start. And that's what I tell people when they're like, I want to find my ancestors. I want to find, where they came from. And they're like, well, where do I start? And I've got, 5 different lines I'm interested in learning about. And it's pick one, just start. It doesn't have to be the quote unquote right one, because there probably isn't one. It's just start. Pick one and just start. So I absolutely love being able to do that type of thing. I want to thank you for helping us kind of figure out how to make our research, make our, our life go hobby that we've had, where we've been documenting these families and want to share it, but how to make it into a bite-sized type of nugget that the next generation will be interested in, that it's not going to be a burden to our family. I certainly don't want, all of my reams of paper and photographs and hours of research to really be just a burden to somebody that they have to figure out what they do. And so I know viewers don't want that either. So I do want to thank you for helping us do that. And can you tell us a little bit about where people can learn more about Artifacts?
Oh, absolutely. So our website is artifacts.com, ARTIFCTS. We took out that second A. We want you to think about artifacts of our lives, but they don't necessarily have to belong in a museum or have huge historic value or financial value. These are the pieces that tell our life stories, right? You can collect and create as many artifacts as you want. We have a mobile app, both for Android and Apple, that you can download as well, just the Artifacts app. And you can start free. And beautiful thing, there's a nice synergy with what we just talked about. Anyone can go create 5 artifacts for free. Go tell your 5 favorite stories and artifacts. Add a photo, share with friends and family. It's a very friendly environment. You don't have to feel intimidated. I know a lot of folks who aren't in the genealogy space can feel really intimidated by genealogy software. They see the family tree branching out. They see all the galleries and documents and they get intimidated, which is unfortunate. But bring them in slowly and see what pops up and what questions they start to ask. And I think you'll be rewarded for all of your passion and curiosity.
I think so. I love it. Passion and curiosity. And that's what we really want to drive, is that curiosity, and so that we can share it. And yes, Artifacts, I loved it because it feels very comfortable. It's not overwhelming. It's a very comfortable, easy process to do as you go in and try to do those first 5. And I found it very rewarding to do, and to be able to get the stories down, because I'm always sometimes a little hesitant with, like, I'm staring at a blank page and I have to do this. It walks you through it, and it just was easy and seamless for that. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And if we've talked a lot about how it's important to add context and share those stories. So I actually also, for viewers, I actually have a photo story guide. So if you have photographs, you're trying to figure out stories, I have a guide to kind of help you start pulling those stories out of that photograph, how to look at that photograph. Maybe you hadn't looked at in a while or it's new to you, and how to pull those stories out. So I actually have a guide that I have created recently for that, and I will have a link to that in the description below, as well as all of the links that we have talked about today, and certainly to artifacts as well. So thank you so much, Ellen, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Lisa. To be continued.
Yeah, to be continued. Thanks.